Welcome to Chamber Talk, brought to you by North Orange County Chamber, where we explore the stories and insights of leaders, business owners and CEOs from various sectors who are making a difference in our community and region. Whether you're tuning in via podcast or joining us via video, we're glad to have you here. Welcome to Chamber Talk. I'm your host, Andrew Gregson, and today we have Bruce Dean, the co-founder of Black Bear Diner. Thank you very much for coming on today, Bruce. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to be here.
We're down here in sunny, well, it's not sunny today, but we're down here in San Diego, which is a little bit different. So I really do appreciate your time. Yeah. So, Bruce, we want to move straight in. We do a lot of things with Black Bear Diner, and that's what really got us into this. And we're doing a lot of things in our hometown, which is in Bueno Park. And Saeed from the store there is doing a great job. So he introduced us to the Black Bear family, so to speak. And we even take some of your ideas with, don't bear, be late and things like that. So we do go from that stuff. But I wanted to start with, let's start from the beginning. It's an amazing story. What sort of got you onto the idea of doing a diner?
Well, I've been in the restaurant business since I was 15. And up in Mount Shasta, California is where we started Black Bear Diner, a town of 3,000 people, 50 miles from the Oregon border, right off the freeway. And so I was running another company at the time that had a restaurant, and I was building convenience stores and gasoline stores. That was kind of what I was doing at the time. And Bob and I, my partner, Bob Manley, who's my co-founder, we've been friends for a long time and had done some business prior to that. So I came to him one day in 1995 and said, look, Bob, I've got an opportunity to get this restaurant down here by the freeway, and I can do it. I had the food. I'd been in the business forever. But Bob was an artist and a teacher, and him and his wife, Lori, owned a wildlife gallery called Mount Shasta Wildlife Gallery. And so Bob said, well, let me think about it. And so a day or two later, we got together. He says, I've got a great idea. Let's call a place Black Bear Diner, kind of after his wildlife gallery and all the things they had. And let's kind of combine the wildlife gallery and the art that we had and that he had in there, and bring my operations and knowledge of food together. And so that's kind of how we put it together. So Bob and Lori came up with the name Black Bear Diner, and again, brought their art, and we have gift shops in the diners, brought that in. I brought the food side. And so we created this thing that kind of small town America type thing.
Yeah. Do you know, it's one of those things that when we talk about it, or when we have events there, that people actually do go back to saying that they really love that American food. You've hit it on the nail on the head.
Yeah, it's really again kind of the American dream that we did here. We never thought we were going to do more than one restaurant. Bob and I did. It was just really going to be for our friends.
Right.
Let's do a restaurant over here, and we'll have all our friends over. It'll be really fun. And we never really thought much more than that it would ever be more than that one.
Right.
And but as soon as we did it, it really struck a chord with people. Mm-hmm. Again, we're right on the freeway. So Mount Shasta is about halfway between Seattle and LA.
Okay.
And so up and down I-5, people go. They stopped in Mount Shasta, and we became very well known. And also, Mount Shasta, as you know, is named after the mountain Mount Shasta, which is 192 feet, and people hike it all the time and climb to the top regularly. That's part of a kind of what people go to Mount Shasta for.
Right.
And of course, you needed a carb load before you went up, and carb load when you come down. And so we became very well known for that, for people coming to Mount Shasta to climb the mountain. And it's just a wonderful place.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really nice. Yeah. It seems that it just fits into the base of something like that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned there about, you were just looking at maybe doing something with your friend and business partner, and then, for a few friends. There's a big step when you then go to the next one and then the next one, and especially in business and being in the chamber, that's a big deal to us, of sharing with other members about what that took and what was that mindset.
Yeah. As most restaurants are, when you start, you basically start with not enough money. And that was us.
Yeah.
We were lucky to kind of pigeonhole put ourselves into this restaurant. The landlord helped us. Our grocery provider helped us, gave us terms on the food, and Bob and I each put in only $15,000 to start Black Bear.
Right.
And I sold a boat, and Bob took some money out of his retirement account. That's how we started. And it really took us 7 years to garnish our cash flow. And really today, when a restaurant fails, many times it's not because it was a bad idea or poorly executed. It failed because they ran out of money.
Right.
And restaurants burn a lot of cash at the beginning. You got to train all your staff. People aren't as efficient as they will be eventually, and your costs are higher. And so we opened it, and the only money we made for a year was we had a jukebox in there that people put quarters in. And every Monday, Bob and I would sit down in the corner booth, our office, corner booth number 1, and we'd get the money out of the jukebox and pour the quarters on the table. And I'd go, Bob, you got 2, I got 2, you got 2. And that was it. I had a pocket full of quarters, all the money I made for a year out of it, and ate every meal at the diner, and just, it's a passion project. I mean, you've got to have it in your blood that this is what you're going to do, and put up with the hard times that go with it. And so it took us, like I said, actually 7 years to build enough cash that I didn't have to worry about sending checks on Friday that I knew they wouldn't be cashed on Tuesday. So.
Now, you also mentioned that, through Bob and his wife, that's where they came up with the name, and then the museum that he had with his art and all the rest of the things.
Yeah.
Was that, once you started, was it almost like you just kept that carrying on, or were there a little bits where you had to tweak or change, or is it almost being the same type of...
Pretty much the same.
That's
if you
amazing,
went to
isn't
our first restaurant in Mount Shasta, which is still there,
right,
still doing well, and our latest restaurant, which is in Texas, and I think we're about 164, 165, they look much the same. The art's the same. The decor is much the same. The feel is the same. So, and it's kind of interesting because for the longest time, we couldn't build a restaurant. It's just too expensive. So we would take other restaurants that have failed over time, or their lease ran out or whatever, and so we would convert it at lesser cost than building a new one, because again, we didn't have the money to do it, and that was our cheapest way to grow. So we did our second restaurant in Redding, California, which is about 60 miles south of Mount Shasta, again on I-5, and where our office is now and where we're headquartered, and did a second one in July 1, 1997. And, on June 30th, it was another brand. They lost their lease. July 1, we came in and put a couple signs on the door and put a couple bears around and put our menus in, and we were Black Bear, 12 hours later.
Wow.
So that's today, obviously, we can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a restaurant ready, beyond just building it, but training the staff, making sure things are right. And, but back then, we just couldn't do it.
That's amazing. It's a really great story.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned earlier a little bit, it really is the true American dream, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's really what, if you were to ask anyone, that's really what it is building it and then making something from something.
Yeah, it really was. It was just the success that we've had has been nothing that we ever figured we'd have.
Now, you mentioned at the beginning, which is very nice, that local produce companies or greengrocers would allow you to work things out with them.
Yeah.
Not really knowing the industry completely, but I'm sure food, produce, and what have you is a little bit different from north or south of California and things like that.
Right.
How did you choose, first off, what types of foods you were going to do? Because they're very sort of like cool American style.
Yeah.
And how did it keep moving as you're going forward?
That was something that I've been in, again, the business since I was 15, and it was in the restaurant we have is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that's called family dining. So, we really reach out to families and kids, and so the food that we've served is basically something that I've served most of my life, just things that good old-fashioned family food, as we used to call it, just things that people like, and bacon and eggs. We make homemade sausage from our roots in Mount Shasta. There was an Italian community because there's a lot of lumber mills up there. So we had a lot of Italian immigrants early in 1900s that came there, and we took some of those recipes and put them into our homemade sausage, our marinara sauce, Lori's grandmother's recipe. And so just did a lot of things that just were down home for our area. And we didn't really know that, well, will people eat this in Las Vegas? Will they eat it in Orange County?
Yeah,
will
right,
they eat it, but really how people eat, is pretty much the same that they've ate across the years.
Sure.
And so it's just nothing fancy, just like I say, good old fashioned family food.
Now, you mentioned a moment ago as well about training and staff, and obviously it's very important, especially if you're trying to keep everything running and what have you.
Right.
What types of things or advice would you give to folks these days? Because we know service has dropped off a little bit in some areas, hasn't it? How do you keep it going?
Well, obviously, training is a challenge, and as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, to be able to duplicate that training, whether we're in Northern California or we're in Texas, and we're also in Arkansas and Missouri, and and that's built around a process, a training process, training staff, to make sure that that they understand what we're trying to do. The real difficulty is in growing big, whether you're in my business or any other business, is how do you duplicate the culture? And really, the culture is something that Bob and I created from the very beginning around, how we wanted our employees treated, how we want our customers treated, and the feel of the restaurants, how we want people to feel themselves when they walk into our restaurants. That's what we're trying to duplicate. And again, it's harder and harder and harder as you get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's something that I'm battling all the time, is how do we maintain our founding culture as we grow to a nationwide brand? And that's a challenge in whatever business you're in as you grow.
Yeah.
How do you duplicate not only the quality of what you do, the things that you do, but the culture of your business?
It's funny you mention that, because I find myself, when I first started at the Chamber, I found this book that was literally written in 1893 when they first started writing their own bylaws. And to be honest with you, with all the stuff that goes on with a business anyway, and the way it grows and all the little pockets it have, I often find myself going back to that little book, reading what their original bylaws or what their ideas were.
Right.
And it sort of like brings you back down and think, oh, see, it wouldn't have worked if I did that.
Right. This is the reason why we're here.
Right. And it really helps you.
Yeah,
I find anyway.
It does. It's easy to get diverted.
Yeah.
It really is. It's easy to get diverted. There's a lot of pressures in our business. I mean, nowadays, more so than ever in our 30 years, around, food cost of eggs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cost of eggs. We serve millions of eggs.
Yeah.
It costs us millions more dollars, right? And, in getting a labor staff there and making sure that they're paid well, and the cost of utilities have gone through the roof, and the cost of insurance has gone through the roof. So the pressures of running our business are maybe much like other members of your chamber has become more and more difficult.
Right.
So I believe you have to stay true to what you were from the beginning, and don't deviate from that. It's easy to deviate. It's easy to cut corners. We call it death by 1,000 cuts. Well, if you do this a little bit and this a little bit and this a little bit, nobody will ever know. Well, guess what? They know. So my job is to sit there and say, look, this is what we are. This is what we're going to do. And if we have to charge more a little for it, then we will, versus changing who we are, what we are. I just don't believe in that. So,
right. It makes total sense that you've got a working co-founder and business partner.
Yeah.
It's very good that you guys are still remaining friends and still in business together, because a lot of people, they fall out.
Right.
How has that changed for you now? Because you're going on a good few years friends now, but how's that relationship gone on over the years?
Well, we've been partners since 1987. We did. We were doing other things, but we did a subdivision together.
All right.
And up out of our area, where we put some lots together and sold them. And Bob was the one guy that I could count on when I said, "Hey, look, I need money from the partnership group." Bob was always the one that put his money up.
Right.
I didn't have to go back to him ever. So it kind of set a basis of understanding between us, that we could trust each other, that we that we could count on each other.
Good.
So when we started this, we'd been friends for a while, and now again, like say 1987 to now, That's, geez, almost 40 years,
Yeah.
right? But, partnerships are like a marriage. There's been ups and downs, and he'd see things one way and I might see things the other way. But we always found that our common good and the growth of the brand, it was important that we find common ground. And we always seem to find common ground and to move forward after we battled a little bit. But so it's been good. Now, Bob now kind of lives over on the coast of Oregon, Brookings, Oregon. Actually owns a nice restaurant over on the harbor in Brookings, Oregon, but also is on our board of directors and so still involved with our business. But he's a little bit older than me, and so he's less involved than I am at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
And, mentioning about the difficulties that you've seen especially over the last few years, how is it for you or a large corporation for yourself finding staff? Because, that's really important.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, you're also looking for a different type of individual too. You're not just like taking anybody off the street there, right?
Yeah. It was really tough post-pandemic to find people as they wanted to get back in the workforce, right? And it's eased up some. I just believe that you've got to create an environment where people want to work, that they're valued and cared for. And I believe in paying them as well as I can. And just, I think they feel that. Hopefully they feel it.
Right.
I couldn't tell you in Texas, do they feel it but I hope that they would,
right.
And to feel that we've got a brand that they like coming to work into. I not only just think how they're treated, but also that the environment is fun, that is lighthearted. Again, we've got this cabin themed with bears everywhere.
It's very homely
bears.
when you go in, actually.
Yeah,
It feels very comfortable.
Hopefully that translates into employees that want to come work. And then that the managers feel that, part of that culture well, because I want them really treating their staffs well. And I believe if you treat your staffs well, they're going to treat the customers well.
Right.
Yeah. So, but it is a challenge and will always be.
So you've had a very successful year. We'll talk about coming up to the 30th anniversary shortly, because I'm sure you've got some type, maybe plans.
Right.
But looking over the years, there's got to be some significant markers that maybe changed things for you or was a significant lesson. You want to share some of those?
Well, I think that how we grew, again, go back to the point, Bob and I didn't have a lot of money at the time. And so we had the original owner of our Mount Shasta restaurant, our Redding restaurant, there was a chain called Jerry's Restaurant. And they were kind of in a mode where they'd kind of run their length of life, and the sales had declined and it wasn't in a good spot. So we kind of partnered up with them to take their restaurants. At one point, they had over 60. And at the point that we met them, maybe they might have had 25. And so we signed a deal with them to convert their restaurants from Jerry's to Black Bear. And that was how Bob and I were able to grow this thing from 2 to I think at probably 25. But
right.
We had a couple of failures along the way. After we did Mount Shasta and we did Redding was very successful. We were very full of ourselves. Decided we were going to go to Chico, which is another town up in Northern California, and we took a restaurant that wasn't our right sized. It was too small. We didn't really know yet who we were, and it takes a while to determine who you are. And for us, it was the size restaurant that we needed, number of seats to be profitable, all of that. So we went to Chico, took one that was too small. Then we went to another town called Red Bluff, which is another Northern California town just south of Redding, and did one that was way too big. And did those in short order. Again, thought we were infallible. And guess what? We weren't. We were able to fail, and it really, really taught us some lessons that who we were, what we needed to be. We ended up closing those restaurants, and they were profitable, but they weren't us. And Bob and I had gone, just the two of us, running one restaurant to 2 to 3 to 4 is 10 times as hard. and stretching out and trying to find the things that we needed to do. So growth, you have to really manage growth. So after that, we came back, tail between our legs, and partnered up with these Jerry's guys and started converting their restaurants, and did one in Sparks, Nevada, which by Reno. And so it was successful. And went to Susanville, California, which is up in the northeast of California, and Salinas, California, by Monterey. So that proved us that we were portable, that people would like what we were doing outside of our little small market area.
Right.
And that gave us. And that also, they had one in Las Vegas. So we converted one in Las Vegas. And not knowing again
how that's
going to go in Las Vegas, right? Yeah. But it went great.
That's
and they
awesome.
had one in Phoenix. We competed some in Phoenix. They went great. So our ability to hook ourselves up with this brand and convert theirs to Black Bear gave us the knowledge and the confidence to move outside of our market area. So
obviously you learned a lot, and you've now figured out that, well, we can go wherever we need to go.
Right.
But what do you really look for an area? If you're expanding, is there certain things you're looking at, sizes of cities or what have you? What do you do?
We do demographic studies on all the cities that we go to, and before, it was just kind of the seat of my pants and the feel of my stomach. I'd go to, I think that feels good. Let's try it, But now we're much more scientific in the approach and data-driven in the approach, and which gives us more surety when we go and open a restaurant. So less likely to make a mistake in where we put them. We made a couple of mistakes over the years. Of
course.
And we've closed a couple of restaurants over the years, not a lot, but the fact that we're now data driven in our approach makes it easier.
Now, it was a really big time, and we skipped on it slightly, or touched on it slightly, should I say, a moment ago. What was the pandemic like for Black Bear Diner?
Oh, it was rough. It was really rough. I mean, one day, I think it was like March 10th, 2020, I talked to, I think overall in our brand at the time, 5,000-6,000 employees that were working for us at the time. And I just felt so bad, not necessarily for us, but for all of them, that I was going to have to call them up. And I did a message to all of them and said, look, we're going to have to stand down for a bit here. We just didn't know what the future was going to be.
Sure.
So in one day, basically I had to tell all those folks that, that I used the word, I didn't want to use the word that we were laying all of you off, because that seemed some level of permanence to it. And I didn't like that.
Right.
I wanted them to know that I cared about them and that we were just going to stand down until we got some more knowledge on when we could reopen.
Right.
And it went on and on and on and on. And it was amazing to me is that I felt so bad for all of our employees out there. They had rents to pay and car payments and childcare and all this stuff, and we couldn't be there for them at that time. And so, but I found out that they just felt really bad for me. Which was amazing. It really was, and I really appreciated that. So we did the best we could, and we kept the restaurants open with minimal staff, and really kind of went to go. Remember all
everything was to go, wasn't it? Right, that's right.
And third-party delivery, the people that we today, it's kind of normal DoorDash and Uber Eats and all those kind of.
So almost it was meant for their business, wasn't it?
Yeah, it fit right there, and tried to, and so kept our restaurants open, kept our managers working. I wanted to keep our managers working because they had hired their staffs, and as soon as we could hire the staffs back, I wanted the managers to reach out to that same group and give them the opportunity to get back as soon as possible.
Right.
But it was rough. It was a rough time, and I remember in the middle of the winter of 2020, and sitting out in the parking lot of our Reading restaurant, where we're headquartered, eating in a tent in about 30 degrees, with heaters blowing on me and a couple of lonely souls sitting in the tent eating. It was just weird.
Yeah. So moving into the positive side, as it started to lift and people were coming in, what did the corporation do then? How did it move on?
Well, we got people back as soon as we could. Again, we tried to bring back our same staff so that we could we could come back quickly.
Right.
And so as soon as we got open, and we were able to open more quickly out of state, it wasn't until June of 21 that we could really open our California restaurants.
Right.
Which is where the heart of our business was. And, but we were able to move quickly and get things going again as better than we would have if we'd, made things more permanent.
Now, recently, we personally experienced that they have the takeouts. They still kept that.
Yeah.
Was that part of what happened through COVID and it moved into it, or was that something you were actually doing prior to?
We were doing prior.
Right.
But about 7% of our business was to-go business prior to the pandemic.
Right.
Then it got up over 25-30%, that way jumped up. I mean, our business was way down, but,
sure.
It was all to go.
Yeah.
But, and then when we could come back to work, it stayed. People are now eating differently than they were prior to pandemic. The to-go and the delivery services are still 15 to 18% of our business, and we're doing catering now, which is a big part of what we're doing. And then, of course, in the restaurants. So people are partaking of how they go out to eat differently than they did prior to the pandemic. So if you're just concentrating on one of those channels, your business will be down. You have to participate in all those channels, whether you're in my business or somebody else's business.
Now, moving, as you just mentioned there, moving into takeout to actually catering, what does that, because that's a big change for a restaurant, particularly for a team, right?
Yeah.
How does that change?
We've always done some catering, but never formally. And, but so we spent a long time on it. I didn't mention, we back in about a month before the pandemic, I decided I wanted to be chairman of the board. I'd been CEO for a long time. And so I brought in a CEO. Her name's Anita Adams. And so she's the CEO of the company. So I handed her the reins about 30 days before the pandemic, and so here you go, and so, but she's done great through that. And so she really strongly supported doing this catering channel. And so, and it's been very successful for us. And she understood that, well, look, we need to vary the different channels of which we deliver what we deliver. So again, very successful.
You're never going to retire, though, are you? You don't seem to be the gentleman who's going to ever retire.
I like what I do.
Yeah, you can tell. You can tell.
Yeah.
So I know you've, if I'm correct in reading this, you've served on the California Restaurants Association board and things like that. Do you mind sharing what advocacy means to you as a restaurateur and also for somebody who's served on a board like that? Well,
yeah, I was on the CRA board for a lot of years, and I served as chairman of the California Restaurant Association in 2015, 2016. And advocacy is everything. I mean, it's the restaurant industry can sometimes be an easy target for legislators and people not quite understanding how tough our business is, how complicated it is, how margin thin we are. Much of the industry is very, very thin on the margins, and you just have to add a little something there and you can tip over. So the CRA is a strong advocate for our industry and for our employees in our industry, and to make sure that we stand for things that will allow us to be successful. If we're successful, we can hire people.
That's true.
Yeah. And the restaurant industry in California, I believe still is the number 2 industry in the state for having the number of employees behind healthcare. It was back in my time.
Right.
So we need great advocacy, and we've got a very good advocacy staff in Sacramento and also locally in this area and in San Diego. We're here today doing this interview in San Diego. They've got a really good local chapter. Orange County's got a very good local chapter of the Restaurant Association. So they're a great organization to be part of.
Now, you'd also mentioned that obviously we're moving into a different, we're all moving into a different sort of arena and business space right now. And I don't want to ask the silly question, what do you see yourself in 5 years? Because that's silly. But where do you see the industry moving in the next couple of years, let's say? I mean, we see a lot of retail stores are sort of closing. Restaurants are very close to those.
Right.
Do you feel that people still need to eat, so it doesn't matter so much? Or
I always believe that going to a restaurant is much more than just eating.
Right.
It feeds your emotions, feeds yourself. You take your family, you take your friends. It's an occasion, right? It's an enjoyable occasion, and I think that's always going to play a part in what people do. It's sometimes easy to get your food delivered to you at home. You don't feel like cooking tonight, and that's great too. But I don't think that feeds your soul as if you go out, you're out, you're enjoying you're enjoying your friends, you enjoy the feel of the place.
The people talking, it sort of gets you going a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's something that we all look forward to.
Right.
And so I always think there's going to be a place for it. Now, we have to do great work. Not just me, but every California restaurant, every restaurant across the nation, we have to do great work for people to want to come in our doors. And it's a very competitive industry. And I just, as you can tell here, I'm very passionate about it. I'm very passionate about every plate of food that's served in our restaurant. We serve millions of plates of food across the country every year. And every day we serve thousands of plates of food. And I'll go into a restaurant and I want to make sure that plate is absolutely right, that the food is prepared properly, that it's in the proper portion. Black Bear is known for large portions of food and a good value. Yeah. And I want to make sure that that's the way we stay. So you have to pay attention to every detail every day. Make sure that you're staffed properly. It's easy to sit there and say, oh, geez, labor's getting a little high. Looks like I need to cut back a little bit.
Sure.
Well, every time you cut back a little bit, you lose a guest because somebody wasn't treated right.
Yeah, service hurts, doesn't it? Yeah.
You've got to deliver great service. Yeah. And if you don't, somebody else will. And so that's my message to our team every day. Again, I'm executive chairman of the board now. I don't make every decision, Anita does. But I'm out there talking with people. I love visiting restaurants. I love talking with our managers and our staff. I love looking at the food that's coming out. I love going in the kitchens and making sure that they're doing everything right, that they're handling our food right, that the places are clean, well organized. And that's my role now. And it's a role I really enjoy.
I really can see what you're talking about there, because as you were mentioning it, I was thinking to myself, often between my wife and myself, say, oh, what would you like to eat? And you go, oh, do you want something,
right.
It's very easy. Oh, you want Mexican, American, whatever, right?
Right.
And we've got a 5-year-old. So then you're thinking, well, hang on a minute, is the food at that restaurant that the kid can eat, right? Or she likes? And the funny thing is as you were mentioning it, even though I'm saying, what do I feel like to eat? Or she's explaining what she wants. To me, in my mind, I do think about the restaurant, like, how's the service, the environment you're in. It is actually a lot more. Without you, maybe you don't take note of that when you're going to somewhere, but automatically it does psychologically feed you.
You and your wife probably have a group of restaurants that you may regularly go to.
You're on it. Our kid loves going there.
Yeah. And a 5-year-old, they love Black Bear. They love the carved bears. We have things, and we've got great children's meals that are cheap, and basically we want families to come in. But again, you've probably got a group of places, and most of the people that might be listening to this have a group of restaurants that they feel comfortable in.
Right.
That they feel that they're recognized. People just want to be recognized and cared about.
Yeah.
That your business, that you're spending your money there, that people are appreciating you spending your money there. Money's hard to make.
Yeah.
So, and as we get into a little bit tougher economy now, people are making different choices.
Right.
And so they want to make sure that they get their money's worth.
Yeah.
They want to make sure that the experience is right, that they're getting taken care of. So that all becomes part of your experience.
Oh, without a doubt. Now, we were talking off camera a little bit moment, and I might get the name wrong again, but we were talking about the dine and donate. Is that right?
Right.
And obviously, when often folks like yourself, you've spent so much time in a business, now you think, oh, I want to give back as well. And I'm sure there might be things in foundations.
Yeah.
You want to share a little bit about your dine and donuts?
Donuts. Dine and donuts. That's a good one. Dine and donate.
Donate.
In each of the communities we are, and the way we look at ourselves is that we're a group of local restaurants. That's the way I want us to think about it. I don't want us to think of Black Bear Dining as a big chain.
Right.
It's not, because we're in local communities, and I want us treating each local community
as your community.
Our community. Right. So Dine and Donates is in each community. We reach out and whatever's important in that community, whether it's supporting the police department or Little League or whatever, we want to do that. So we do these things where people can come in and they help out and they help serve, and it's kind of fun for them. All their friends come in, and we give a portion of the profits every night, the sales to that organization. So it's good, Philanthropy is important to us. For a minute, I'll talk a little bit about that. We've raised over millions of dollars for Make-A-Wish over the years. We really believe in Make-A-Wish. And so every December, we have a whole month of December that we raise money for Make-A-Wish and sponsor children's wishes. Really important to us. And one thing that we do that's kind of my pet project is that we buy all our coffee in Nicaragua.
Okay.
And I chose Nicaragua because they have great coffee that they grow in northern Nicaragua, that it was one of the poorest places in the world. The average family income was about $400 a year at the time. And so I went to Nicaragua and wanted to single source our coffee. So, which means that there is no blends from all over the world.
Sure.
It comes from there. And then I wanted to sit there and create something where the money went back, a portion of money went back into those local communities.
Okay.
They didn't have water in their homes. They were going down and to maybe a communal well where they'd have to pump it by hand, and that was the women and the daughters in each community, or they'd have to go to a local stream and get money and get their water. And so we put money back into that. We call it Bears Brew Back. And so we've now piped water to over 400 homes in that community with fresh water. They're now much healthier than they were. They had a lot of intestinal issues from bad water, and we've stopped that. And in those communities, the kids don't have to go pump water in the morning. The water's right in their homes. They can go to school. They're not sick from the water. And so actually, school participation has gone up 21% in those communities. And we've also donated people in that area. They couldn't go to school if they didn't have school supplies.
All right.
So we've donated over 5,000 backpacks with school supplies for kids in that part of the world to go to school. So again, philanthropy is important to us. And whether it's dine and donate on a local level, Make-A-Wish on kind of a bigger level, or on an international level, the Bears Brew Back program.
I love all that. I think that's an amazing thing.
So every time you come into Black Bear and drink a cup of coffee, you're helping the people in northern Nicaragua.
That's awesome. Well, it's funny. A lot of people do mention how nice they like the coffee.
The coffee's good.
That's it.
Coffee's good.
That's good. So on another plus note, you guys are celebrating your 30th anniversary this year.
Yeah.
Are you celebrating it in style? Is there a special Black Bear Diner menu?
Well,
what's going on?
The actual 30th anniversary is September 22nd. 1995 as we started. So we're going to do some fancy things, and maybe we may reach back with some. I don't know if I could duplicate the pricing for 1995,
Probably not.
But maybe for an hour or two. I don't know. But our marketing team will come up with something with that, because it is, again, it's a special anniversary.
It's a huge, huge step in life.
Yes, we never figured we'd do it. We never figured we'd have two.
Yeah.
And here we are 30 years later and trying to still do great work.
Now, is there anything in particular that you had on the menu at the beginning that is still there today, or on the other side that you just let go?
Most of the menu that we started in 1995, again, they're just good old-fashioned food, right? Bacon and eggs, sausage and eggs, fresh potatoes. We make fresh biscuits every day. We make fresh corned beef hash. All that stuff we've been doing for 30 years. Menu items come and go, and you bring things in, and then you take things out, but it's just pretty much the same kind of food that we always had, and again, I still think if you do it well, people will be eating that same food 30 years from now.
That's true. Do you have a favorite spot on the menu, or are you choose the day?
I've been always on a diet for the last 30 years. So Bruce's no carb omelet, that I ate so that I couldn't have potatoes, and try to keep myself
We
under
don't
control.
You don't have that on the menu. You don't have a Bruce or non-carb menu, do you?
It's on there, And, Bob, we named a hamburger after him. He loved our hamburger. So we built this really big hamburger called Bob's Big Bear Burger after my partner, Bob. And even, that's just kind of what we do.
So moving forward into, obviously we're nearly at the 30 mark stretch in September 22nd. That's really cool. Yeah. What are the next steps after that? Is it just, we're just continually to move in one direction, or are there other ideas or things that you were looking at doing maybe?
I think as time goes by, I think you have to assess who you are and how you need to change as the generations change 30 years in. So we're looking at ways that maybe we can reach out to the younger generation if they're eating differently than what we have over the past 30 years. Okay. I think you have to do that. I think we're looking at our decor. Is it time to young that up a little bit, fancy it up a little bit, make something different? We're assessing all those things. You want to make sure that you have a predictability of experience across the country, but maybe it's time to start looking at things a little differently. I always believe you have to have deep roots. There's always folks that think you should change for change's sake. But I believe you have to have deep roots. But I also think you have to look outside the box occasionally.
Sure.
To sit there and say, what can we do differently? What, where are we going for the next 30?
Modernize your deep roots, basically.
Yeah, modernize it, and make things so people come in, that's not the same old thing.
So do you ever jump behind the grill and give a little try
I used to for a long time. I used to, when we'd go and we'd tell the story that when we opened the first diner in Mount Shasta, Bob and I worked 16 hours a day for 38 straight days. And I was in the kitchen and he was in the front, because he'd never been in the restaurant business, but but he was great with the customers, and he'd pour coffee cross-handed, and I'd be back there sweating bullets, cooking. And when you're in the restaurant business and you're behind a grill and you're working all day, you don't feel like eating. So each of us lost like 40 pounds in the first 38 days because you're just working all day long and you don't eat. Yeah. And so anyway, that went on for a while. For a few years, we started franchising in 2002.
Okay.
We kind of ran out of the restaurants. I mentioned that Jerry's group that we converted, but we had a lot of people that wanted black bears in their community. So we actually started franchising in 2002, 2003. And the first franchise unit we kind of did with the Jerry's guys was over in Sparks, Nevada. And again, so there I think I cooked for 16 straight days. And after that, I just didn't want to do it that much anymore. So I'll go in the kitchen, and at least I've got some credibility with the cooks, and I'll talk about how I want things done without me actually having to do it, right?
With some background.
Right.
That's the difference.
Look, guys, this is how we want to do this.
Yeah, that's cool.
So
that's a good point there, actually. It's a good question is, how does it make you feel as an owner when you're sort of like changing the way you're doing your business, and now maybe you are bringing other people in by franchising? Right. What does that do for you personally?
Well, the deal you mentioned on franchising, I need to make sure that we bring people in. If all of a sudden you said you wanted a franchise, you've never been in the food business, you want to, boy, that sounds good. I'm not doing you any favors by letting you have a franchise, because it's hard work. You have to know the food business. Sure. You've got to know it. Experience is everything. Our most experienced and oftentimes successful franchisees are those that work in their business, that have been in food service, know what it is, know what it's about. So it's not a great investment vehicle because maybe like something else might be fast casual or a fast food type thing. This one is you've got to get in there and work it. Right. You've got to get in there and work it. And if so, you do great work, you do well. But so anyway, that's how I have to choose that franchisee. And obviously we have people in our organization now that assess and do that.
Sure. I
don't have to do that anymore.
No, that's true. That's true. So we've come to like the point in our podcast today or our episode where we always send it back to the guest, because obviously we've been firing you questions all the time. And we just like to give people that opportunity, that open mic time, whether it's to thank folks who they've worked with, or whether it's even to give some advice to folks in the future.
Yeah. Well, everybody, has got to be passionate about what they do. As you can tell, I'm passionate about what I do. I often counsel people to sit there. I'm part of a group called Vistage, which is a CEO counseling group that I help people with. And we talk about, one, you've got to be very passionate about what you want to do. If whatever you want to do, you're passionate about what you do, right? And to just do something to make a living without being passionate about it, I just don't think you can be greatly successful at it. So you do that. We talked about deep roots. Be very, very sure of what you're doing. And because I always say, if you don't, the winds will blow. Economies will change. People will change. You lose key staff, all these things. And so you just have to stay true to who you are. And I always say this to the people that want to get in the restaurant business is that, cash is king, and make sure that you're well funded, that you can brace through the bad times and go through the things as you build your business, and I always tell people again that, in my Vistage group, you've just got to care about every detail. You've just got to care about it. Bob and I built the brand not in one day.
No.
And we didn't build it in a boardroom.
Mm-mm.
We built it in booth number 1 in Mount Shasta, talking every day for years. Oh, let's do this. So let's do that. You got to live it.
Yeah.
And so those are the things that I advise people.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so very much for spending time with us today. Yeah. It's a great pleasure meeting you. We've been excited for probably nearly a month and a half since we've reached out to your marketing team and saying, so I really appreciate it. Thank you so very much for your time today.
And thanks for those who listened.
If you'd like to catch more conversations with leaders who are shaping the North Orange County future, head over to chambertalk.podbean.com. And if you're watching on YouTube or tuning in through your favorite podcast platform, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Want to stay in the loop? Just head over to nocchamber.com and click the sign up for e-news on the front of the page. Until next time, stay inspired and stay engaged.